Welcome to Mind Shield. We protect the mind and pursue the truth. Let's get started.
Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to break down the absolutely critical path for testing extraordinary sensory claims. Things like the alleged ability to hear microwaves, sometimes called the Frey effect. We're going to explore how scientists can investigate these things ethically so that participants are safe and the results can actually survive some serious skepticism.
This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? Before we even think about hunting for the truth, we have to build a solid ethical foundation. Because how you get to an answer matters just as much as the answer itself. It's what separates real, legitimate science from just being reckless. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the ethical rules of the road. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of designing a test that's basically deception-proof. After that, we'll look at how you can measure something you can't see, what it means when you find nothing, and finally, we'll talk about the path forward from here.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, this non-negotiable ethical framework. Look, any research that involves a human being has to start right here. This isn't a nice-to-have, it's the law, and it's our moral baseline. So the very first stop for any serious researcher is something called an Institutional Review Board, or IRB. You can think of them as the official guardians of participant safety and rights. They're mandated by federal regulations, and they review every single detail of a study to make sure it's on the level before anyone even walks into the lab.
And these are the core principles, the big ones, born from some hard lessons in history that led to rules like the Nuremberg Code. Participants have to give informed consent, which means they know exactly what they're signing up for. The risk of harm has to be as low as humanly possible. The IRB watches over the whole thing, and this is so important. A participant can get up and walk out at any time. For any reason, no penalty, period.
All right, so with that ethical foundation firmly in place, let's get to the really clever part. How do you design an experiment that can actually separate a real effect from, the power of suggestion or just plain old human bias? This is where the science gets fun. Well, probably the single most powerful tool we have is the sham control. It's basically a placebo. To the participant, everything looks and feels exactly the same from one trial to the next. But secretly, in some of those trials, the machine isn't sending any signal at all. This is how we find out if someone's reacting to a real signal or just the idea of one.
So, what does a truly gold standard protocol look like? It really boils down to these 4 steps. 1. You get that IRB approval we talked about. 2. You follow safety limits from respected organizations like ICN-IRP and IEEE to the letter. 3. You randomly mix up the real signal trials with the sham trials. And 4. You use double blinding. This is the real game changer. It means not even the researcher in the room with the participant knows which trial is real and which is a sham. It just wipes out bias.
And this right here is the whole point. We're moving from a simple anecdote to hard data. It's the massive difference between someone saying, "Yeah, I heard a click when the machine was on," and a researcher being able to say, "The subject correctly identified the signal 85% of the time and only had a 5% false alarm rate during the sham trials." See? One is a story, the other is evidence. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. How do you actually measure a sensation that someone says is happening entirely inside their own head? How do you make something so subjective objective? Well, it all has to start with the subjective report. We need the person to tell us what they think they're experiencing. A lot of times it's as simple as press this button when you hear the click. It's the first absolutely essential piece of the puzzle. But here's the thing, on its own, it's not enough, not by a long shot.
Because the critical next question is always this: did our instruments agree? Did we see a physical event that lines up perfectly with when they press the button? You can't just take someone's word for it, you have to have backup. You need the machines to tell the exact same story.
That's why we need all 3 of these tiers to build a really convincing case. First, you've got the subjective report, the button press. Second, you have objective correlates, actual physical measurements from the body. For example, with the Frey effect, you might put a tiny accelerometer on the person's head to see if you can detect what are called thermoelastic acoustic waves, which are basically microscopic vibrations in the skull tissue. And finally, you have the instrumentation logs, the data from the machine itself, proving a signal was sent at that exact moment. And this is how we make sense of all that data.
Scientists use really smart statistical methods, like signal detection theory. The easiest way to think about it is this. It's a tool that helps you separate a real hit from a false alarm. It helps you figure out if someone actually has a special sensitivity, or if they're just really good at guessing when a signal might either. It's how you get beyond luck.
But what happens when you do all this careful, ethical, and rigorous work and the data shows, well, nothing? It's really important to remember that this isn't a failure. A null result is still a result, and it's incredibly valuable scientifically.
This is the key question you have to ask yourself. If your participant is pressing the button just as often when the machine is secretly off as when it's on, what does that tell you? It tells you a lot. A null result like this is powerful, powerful data.
These are the classic signs that whatever the person is feeling, it probably isn't linked to the signal you're testing. The biggest red flag, of course, is no separation between the sham and real trials. Another is when their button presses are all over the place and don't line up with your instrument logs. Or maybe you find an uncontrolled confound, the classic, oh, it was just the equipment humming scenario. And here is a fantastic example of what we call a key disconfirmer. A Jason Advisory study noted this. The whole idea of the fray effect is that the sound is generated inside your head, so by definition, an external microphone can't pick it up. If you can record a sound with a mic in the room, then you've just proved it's a regular acoustic noise, not the fray effect. It's a beautifully clean and simple test.
So when you put all of this together, this rigorous ethical framework is how we build a reliable understanding of these kinds of claims. It's how we separate what's real and verifiable from what isn't.
And if you take away one thing today, let it be this. The scientific process, when it's done right, isn't about taking sides. The goal isn't to be a professional debunker or a true believer. It's about designing a test that is so strong, so robust, that whatever results pop out, positive, negative, or null, you can actually trust them. It's the best tool we have for finding the signal in the noise.
So, having this powerful framework for testing is one thing, but it naturally leads to our final question for today. Where do we go from here?
While the path forward is all about taking every credible piece of the puzzle and unifying it. That means creating things like architecture maps to really understand the technical specs of any devices involved. It means building trace matrices, which are basically big, organized spreadsheets that link every single claim back to a concrete piece of evidence. And it means using tools like Freedom of Information Act requests, or FOIA, to dig up historical documents and fill in the blanks. It's all about methodically, systematically, building a complete evidence-based picture, one piece at a time.